uniquely in Gaza, half of the population of 2 million are under 18. This is a place that is jam-packed with children. And when Hamas embed themselves among civilians, as they do...
Well, where else could they embed themselves?
It's
a prison camp.
I accept that. If you suffer a terror attack of that nature, in the way that it was perpetrated, that Israel has a fundamental right and a duty to its people, if the perpetrators say we're going to keep trying to do this, to defend itself.
I love this argument from Piers Morgan. So this is a legendary viral interview with George Galloway, which I personally never had the chance to watch. So I'm very excited to finally get a chance to watch it, and I hope all of you enjoyed as well. I take the long podcast, condense it into a 20-25 minute-ish video, so you don't have to go waste your time and watch the whole video on Piers Morgan. And if you appreciate that, make sure you like this video and subscribe to my channel. Only about 9% of my viewers are subscribed, guys. Come on, let's get that up to 20%. I really appreciate it. Let's change some minds out there. So the point I wanted to make right now is Piers Morgan always says Israel has a fundamental, not right, but duty to defend itself. Duty as in it's mandatory. They must do it. They must defend themselves. So why don't Palestinians have that same fundamental duty when Israelis are attacking them? They don't even have a military. So I think they have a fundamental right to defend themselves then. Do they not?
I agree with that.
But to defend yourself by killing and mutilating 150,000 people and climbing, Save the Children have just said, there are 21,000 missing children on top of the 15,000.
Oh, we don't have
Is that defense? Sounds more like offense to me. And that's kind of sad about the missing children. They're probably stuck under rubble somewhere. Oh man, my heart breaks thinking about that. There's probably kids under rubbles of buildings that yet to be founded.
These figures have not been confirmed.
Well, you can believe Save the Children or not. I agree. I think they're a pretty reputable organization.
I believe
Princess Anne is their patron.
It is widely accepted that up to about 40,000 people so far have died. We don't know how many of those are Hamas. Israel would have you believe it's 15,000.
Well, I've seen a lot of pictures of people who are manifestly not Hamas.
I agree.
So have you.
I agree. And I think the slaughter of the children has been horrific.
Yeah, and inevitable.
Yeah.
Inevitable.
It is inevitable. But I also think
if you defend yourself by raining down bombs on tents, it is inevitable that you are going to kill and mutilate children and women who cannot possibly be Hamas.
But Hamas would have known that Israel would respond in that way.
Yes.
Okay, so Israel would have known that if they trap people in a cage, right? Control the water, the electricity, the food, everything going in and out, not allowed to have a military, not allowed to have elections, whatever, blah, 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 have zero autonomy. Would they not have known that eventually people will not like how they're being treated and start to resist? Especially when they know that right outside of a wall, people are literally living a rich life like they're living in some nice part of California or New York. We're talking universal health care. We're talking a budget surplus. We're talking literally like they're living in America. So you got people living in a concentration camp and then people living in a nice area in America and a wall dividing. You don't think people are eventually going to resist that?
But Israel would have known that if you keep 2.3 million people in a cage,
got them.
They're going to try and break out. So there's all kinds of concomitant should have knowns in this story. They should have known when they occupied Palestinian land, drove hundreds of thousands of them out, never to return, that those people would have children and they would have children, and enmity, bitterness, and a desire for revenge would exist forever. And so it has. Now, the Gaza people maybe were unlucky. They were driven out only to Gaza, not to the neighboring countries. And they had a fence put around them. And by the way, this is something I think you should acknowledge. It suited Israel that Hamas were there. They begged Qatar to keep on funding Hamas.
I agree with you.
Because they didn't want Arafat, my friend.
Let me clear that.
They wanted an Islamist enemy.
Netanyahu liked the idea of the Palestinian governments being split between Palestinian Authority and Hamas. It suited him that they were divided, that there wasn't a unity governing the Palestinian people. That is why he helped authorize these billions being sent through to Hamas. And Hamas then, in my opinion, abused that money and used it to build the tunnels where they went down, but they didn't let the civilians go down, to arm themselves to the teeth and plan attacks, right? So I don't remotely excuse Netanyahu from this. I actually think going out of this
goes much further back. Piers, I was there, saw it with my own eyes.
Well,
the birth of Hamas.
Right, but
I mean,
they were given
existed,
power in 2005,
yeah,
is my point.
But it's existed for 38 years.
Right, but then
I've been involved.
You know what's crazy? That Palestinian flag has been around much longer than 2005. I'm pretty sure that Palestinian flag is also used in the West Banks. However, the scary part is, I mean, I've seen the Palestinian flag, being flown around all the time from Palestinians. When you have the Palestinian flag up now, the media is literally conflating that with Hamas. So if you have the Palestinian flag up, the media and people brainwashed by the media will literally think that you're a Hamas supporter. Pretty wild. Pretty wild.
In 2005.
Sure, but I've been involved for 50 years. So I can tell you that I saw with my own eyes the deliberate bringing into being of an Islamist resistance set of organizations to stymie Yasser Arafat. They didn't want Arafat. They didn't want the likes of my friend, the next legitimate president, the Nelson Mandela of Palestine, Marwan Barghouti. Many of his family members have been on your show.
Yeah,
Marwan Barghouti, they want to keep him in a dungeon because he represents an ideal that unites people of all religions and none. Has an ability to attract people around the world to the nobility of his cause. So kill and jail all the people like that. Make a bogeyman of an Islamist enemy. Make sure he continues to be funded by Arab regimes that you are able to order around. And that's what happened. That's not to say that the resistance fighters who are now taking a heavy toll on Netanyahu's invaders, very heavy. It's now 9 months. They still haven't quashed the resistance in these camps. Well, within one state, it will have to be, because the two-state solution, which I supported as an Arafatist, I look foolish now, having supported the Oslo Agreement. I look like an idiot.
Why?
Arafat looks like an idiot. Because we believed that there would be a two-state solution. And almost 40 years after the agreement, there's not 1 centimeter of Palestine free. And Gaza is in complete ruins. The West Bank is on fire. Settlers are running amok. The attempt to ethnically cleanse the West Bank and East Jerusalem is running concurrently with the slaughter in Gaza. So where are you going to put two-state solution?
I would add a massive but to that, which is, but one of the main reasons for this current mayhem is what Hamas did on October the 7th.
This has been going on way before October the 7th. Piers, you're so ignorant on this matter. And I've said this before. I don't think he's as ignorant as we think he is. I think he just says these facts to keep the discussion going on longer. He's just making money off the views. Just gets different viewpoints all the time. Sometimes he's pro-Israeli. Sometimes he's a little bit pro-Palestinian. Back and forth. Just milked it. Actually, I remember when this conflict happened, Piers Morgan's channel I'm pretty sure wasn't even at 1 million subscribers. Think about that. I'm pretty sure he wasn't even at 1 million subscribers then.
Agree at all with that. And
you have to agree with that.
The chronology makes it clear that that's not true. There's 800,000 illegal settlers in the West Bank. They all settled there long before October the 7th.
I think, look, again, for the record, the expansion of the settlements, particularly since October the 7th, is completely outrageous. It shouldn't be happening.
99.9% of them were all built before October the 7th. It's as foolish to think that this all began on October 7th. I know you don't, but many commentators feel that way, talk that way, that it all begins when the Sky News cameras
One of the best pieces I've read on this whole thing, I'll tell you, was quite early on. Jonathan Friedland is a Jewish columnist for The Guardian. And he wrote a really, I think, amazing column in which he said, I can present, as a Jewish man, a very clear, coherent argument for why both sides have a right to feel most aggrieved in this 75-year conflict. It was a really interesting piece where he didn't take a position. He just explored the arguments on both sides, went back to 1948, and through a series of spiraling circumstances, hundreds of thousands displaced on both sides in those first few years, that ultimately you end up with a lot of very aggrieved people being pushed and shoved out of their homes. A lot of bloodshed starts. You then have a series of wars almost entirely started by the Arab side, but then the response from Israel often being massively disproportionate.
Well, you say started by the Arab side.
I'm talking about the specific flare-ups of war.
Well, the 1973 war was an attempt to get back the territories of 1967. The resistance from 1948 onwards was because the country called Palestine was wiped off the map and its people scattered to the four winds. They're never going to accept that. Neither would you. We wouldn't accept it in our own country.
But can you put yourself in the
If someone came from New York and took over your house, Piers, you would never accept it.
I understand that. What I'm saying is, can you accept that if Jonathan Friedland, as a Jewish man, can find it in his heart to see that the Palestinians have had real cause for grievance, can you, as somebody who supports the Palestinian side, can you understand why Jewish people, why Israelis also feel a burning sense of grievance and injustice for what they've endured at the same time?
I think that's a very stupid argument that Piers Morgan has made. He's basically saying that, hey, if one side could kind of be empathetic towards the other side, can't you be empathetic towards the other side? No, because at the end of the day, that's if people have shared, blame. At the end of the day, if there's one party that's right, one party that's wrong, the party that's right doesn't necessarily have to be empathetic to the party that's 100% wrong. Because you're really forcing it at that point. Yeah, I kind of get, Israelis want a home country, but yeah, they can't just steal someone else's though. That's not okay.
Well, they endured it at the hands of Christian Europeans, not at the hands of the Palestinians.
Can you accept that they do feel that and have a right to?
I know that they feel it. It's my job to empathize, to understand, to walk in the other fellow's shoes. But the facts cannot be changed. There once was a Palestine, now there is not. The people came from New York, from Paris and London and all over Europe and took their homes and took their land. No one's ever going to accept that. There will always be resistance to that. As long as there are two Palestinians left alive, male and female, there will be a Palestinian resistance. It's a failure to grasp that which has led to this. Now, I said 1948, I could go back. I was in a building in Manchester, in Cheetham Hill, last Saturday night, where the Balfour Declaration was received and co-signed by the Zionist organizations. I was literally in the building. It's a big Manchester story. Balfour himself was an MP in Manchester. The document was signed in Manchester. The reality is, when we promised...
MP, for all the Americans out there, is Member of Parliament. And George Galloway himself used to be a Member of Parliament for England.
On behalf of one people, to give to a second people the land that belonged to a third people, we set off, as Churchill put it, down a descending staircase, soaked in blood. That's why British people, when some people say, why are you so exercised by this? Because my country caused it, and my country is still involved in it. That's why I'm so exercised by it. Why are we so enthralled to a very small country of 7 or 8 million Israelis that we are prepared to risk what might become World War III over defending it? If, as we are speaking, Israel invades Lebanon, Hezbollah in Lebanon will be a Donnybrook, a battle royal, which may very well immediately draw in the Americans.
Well, the last time this happened, it actually didn't turn out to be that at all.
It didn't, because Hezbollah gave them a bloody good hiding.
Well, they didn't.
As I said on Sky News on my biggest ever clip.
But that's all
they
what happened.
Did. Israel ran away.
No, Israel didn't.
And Hezbollah are now...
That's a shocking mischaracterization of what happened.
What happened there?
Hezbollah did not see off Israel the last time they clashed.
Well, I think we need to go back and check the news clippings of that.
Israel gave Hezbollah a pretty big bloody nose.
Well, you're the only person I've ever heard say that. But
really?
But only. But
I'm the only person who thinks.
I'm the only person I have ever heard say that. Everybody else believes Hezbollah gave Israel a bloody good hiding. But the most important
Why did they stop there then? If they were winning, why did they stop?
Well, the most important thing is...
Why did they stop?
The most important thing is Hezbollah is now 10, 20, 50 times more powerful than it was in 2006. They are hundreds of thousands of men under arms. They have the best arms. They have Russian anti-aircraft missiles. They have Iranian ballistic missiles. They could turn Israel into a giant firestorm. So if Netanyahu does this, we're going to have to make up our mind whether we want to risk an international conflagration to save Netanyahu and his gang.
To be fair here, this interview is 9 months ago, and George Galloway, I think, was a little bit wrong here. I think Piers Morgan, shockingly, is correct here, where I think Hezbollah is no match for Israel's army. I think they kind of proved that. Israel, destroyed the Hezbollah leaders with the whole beeper attack. So yeah, I think Piers Morgan was right here.
I don't think there's any incentive for Netanyahu to bring an end to any warfare at the moment.
No, that's
because the moment it is, all the polls suggest the Israeli people will kick him out of office, and then the next phase of his life will be in a court facing corruption charges.
Sure.
So I don't see any future after this war ends for Netanyahu or half of more of that cabinet. But I don't see any future for Hamas either in having any form of governing over the people of Gaza. Do you?
I don't think they care about governing.
No, but do you think they should have any
I think
governing
the
role?
Palestinians should pick their leaders, not Piers Morgan or George Galloway. But the point is...
No, but you disagree with me about Israel.
They're not going to have...
You're giving a view about Israel. You can give one about Palestine.
I support Marwan Barghouti. I want him released from jail and to be the president of both parts.
But you accept that Hamas, after what happened on October the 7th, they should have no governing responsibility at any level?
Well, unless the Palestinians pick them. The point is, though, they've no interest in governing. They're a liberation organization, a resistance organization,
a terrorist organization
with an Islamist ideology, which will continue and will in fact become stronger by the failure of the West to be that surgeon operating on Israel's foot.
Isn't Islamist ideology terrorism?
No, not all of it. Of course, the Muslim Brotherhood are Islamists, but they're not terrorists.
Can someone explain to me what Islamist means? So Islamist groups are terrorists now? Islamist, does that mean the same as Muslim? Islamist? I don't get it. I don't like that word.
The ANC had a terrorist wing, as was described. There are all kinds of parts of these organizations, but their ideology, which I don't support, don't share, is strengthened by what's happened over the last 9 months.
I think that may well be the case.
I'm sure of it.
I've been worried about that.
I lived through it. I lived through Arafat's support going down and down and down because of his failure to deliver what he said the Oslo Agreement was going to bring. He said, I'll be there, I'll be praying in the Al-Aqsa in Jerusalem, we'll have a state in the West Bank and Gaza. And as the years went by and people saw no such thing, they began to turn to other political forces. And it suited the West, it suited Israel, not just in this theater, for your very much older viewers. They did the same in Egypt. They built up the Muslim Brotherhood because they hated Nasser. They hated Nasser because he nationalized the Suez Canal and began to spark the idea of Arab national unity and so on across the region. So they built up these Islamist forces.
But if you don't have a two-state solution, George, how does this ever lead to peace?
The way you described it. That's why I'm instantly agreed with you. Let's call it the Holy Land. If you like, we can call it Israel-Palestine. One country between that famous river and that famous sea, where every Jew, Muslim and Christian lives as an equal. That's what we did at the end of apartheid in South Africa.
How do they live as peaceful equals, given what's happened?
Well, it'll never be perfect any more than it is in Northern Ireland or in South Africa now. But any alternative proposal has the disbenefit of having obviously been debunked. The two-state solution is debunked. Nobody believes in it, least of all Israel, that would have to clear the 800,000 settlers off the land that's supposed to be the Palestinian state. That's not going to work. Now, you may say, this will never happen. I tell you, it will not happen in my lifetime. But my youngest child is 3 years old. I believe it can happen in hers. If we stop endlessly bankrolling, arming, diplomatically covering for, culturally fluffing the state of Israel and begin to be at least even-handed in the way that you are now being. Be even-handed. Recognize that the Palestinians have rights too, and that Palestinian lives matter too. In 100 years, maybe we'll get to the Holy Land.
To go back to October the 7th, when you realised the scale of what had happened that day, do you condemn what happened that day?
Well, I have to first correct you on something. It was by no means the single biggest slaughter in the Israel-Palestine chapter.
In one day?
In one day. In fact, in 5 hours.
See, this is a big fact that people constantly mischaracterize, that, oh, it was the bloodiest day in their history. Yeah, maybe for Israel, not for the Palestine-Israel conflict. Israel has done much worse to the Palestinians. I mean, even now, okay, that was one day, October 7th, and then for over a year, they've been slaughtering them. I mean, does the one bloodiest day matter, or does the overall number matter? Like, that's a non-argument that Piers Morgan has. And just as a reminder, make sure you do your part and like this video and subscribe to my channel. When you do that, the video goes to a larger audience, YouTube pushes it more, and we can change more minds. And also, as I mentioned, only about 9% of my viewers are actually subscribed to my channel. It takes 2 seconds to do. Just go ahead and subscribe. And if you really want to help support this channel, if you enjoy the work I'm doing, become a member. It's only $2.99 a month. The link will be in the description below. It helps out with the revenue. A lot of my videos do get demonetized. Now let's continue.
With Sharon on the roof shining a searchlight into the Sabra and Shatila camps in Beirut, 3,850 Palestinian women and children. There were only women and children because the men had all agreed to sail away to Tunisia as part of an American brokered deal. Now, younger viewers will not remember Sabra and Shatila, but those two names are burned in the minds of those older and who care about it. So that's triple the actual death toll on October the 7th.
Well, nearly 7,000 more were wounded on October the 7th.
Yeah, but the fact that you thought, I mean, this respectfully, that this was the biggest single day of slaughter is part of the problem. The lives, the blood of Palestinians is oftentimes by commentators and politicians regarded as less valuable than the blood of Israelis. All the blood is a disgrace, all of it. And insofar as terrorist acts are committed by Palestinian organizations, by terrorists I mean the harming, killing of innocent civilians, of course I condemn that.
So do you accept, on that then, do you accept, because the number you gave for the other atrocity, which is what it was, is disputed, you know it's disputed. So
the Sabra Shatila?
Yeah, the actual toll is disputed.
Well, the death toll on October 7th is
Well, I know you dispute it, but there's more clarity about the numbers on that.
No, there isn't, because the Israeli media reports have not been reflected in Western reports. But the Israeli media all the time reports that significant casualties were inflicted by Israeli forces themselves, and deliberately under Netanyahu's Hannibal directive, which states that no one should be allowed to be taken hostage, kill them, rather than allow them to be taken hostage.
But over 230 were taken hostage.
Yeah, and taking women.
And the latest figures are that 1,143 people were killed in the initial series of terror attacks, 373 of whom were linked to security forces, 766 of whom were civilians. Now, you've questioned those before. Do you question those now?
No, I question who killed whom, but I don't eschew condemnation of the killing of innocent civilians. If you show me an old woman who was killed by a Palestinian fighter...
Well, they showed it themselves. I mean, they broadcast many of the atrocities to the world.
I absolutely condemn that. I also condemn the taking of women and children as hostages, whether they're taken by the Israeli government, and there are 9,000 hostages in Israeli dungeons that are untried, not even charged. They're just held there as hostages. In Gaza.
Do you think what Hamas did that day was a terrorist attack?
Well, the parts that I'm talking about were undoubtedly a terrorist attack.
Right.
But if
you see, look, I wasn't expecting you to say that, and the reason I think it's significant, George, is a lot of people have sat in that chair on the Palestinian side of this debate, and they have including Jeremy Corbyn, I might add, who have resolutely refused to condemn what Hamas did that day. And I find that very difficult to get past.
Well,
I've often...
I understand that.
I've ended up with 20-minute debates, as I did with Corbyn about it, because I don't see how any human being cannot tell that what it is.
Killing innocent civilians, whether on London Bridge or on the London Underground or at a music festival, are terrorist acts because they are punishing innocent people for the crimes of guilty people. Now, I was underground as an agent of the ANC in apartheid South Africa. I was working for Nelson Mandela's ANC. I gave my blood on the floor of the Guguletu police station in Cape Town. Was the ANC a terrorist organization? The answer to that is no, even though they had people who carried out terrorist attacks. You have to understand the whole picture and not just a tiny corner of a single snapshot.
Wow, I think George Galloway did an excellent job explaining this.
The ANC, like the Palestinians, are fighting against an apartheid state. In the case of Palestine, the millions of Palestinians scattered around the world with no one speaking up for them. And
when people categorize what Hamas did on October 7th as resistance, do you think that's an acceptable choice of word for what happened that day?
If you're fighting against occupation forces, undoubtedly it is. So if you cross the wire, break out of the wire of the concentration camp, it was David Cameron, I remind you, who called it the largest open-air prison camp in the world. If you break through and you start taking a toll on your guards, the people who've kept you in this absolute immiseration, penury, with regular death being dealt to you, then that's a legitimate act of resistance.
But it's not legitimate to attack kids and grandmothers.
I already said that.
No, that's what I mean. That's why I mean.
Yeah.
Some people try to describe what Hamas did that day as resistance.
No, killing grandmas and kids is terrorism.
It's not resistance.
It's not resistance.
Right.
It's terrorism.
That's my point.
But killing soldiers and security officers of the Israeli state is enshrined in international law. When you used the phrase earlier about Israel having the right to defend itself, it literally does not have the right. It's excluded.
Every country has the right to defend itself.
It's excluded in international law that any country has the right to defend itself from territories that it illegally occupies. So the occupied have that right.
Hang on. How does this get resolved? And how long will it take?
I don't think it's going to be resolved and therefore cannot give a timescale. There's never going to be a two-state solution until, a surgeon can't operate on his own foot. Until outside surgeons operate on this, it's not going to be resolved. As long as we keep giving Israel
when you
money.
see the Abraham Accords, you see normalization of relations with Arab countries and Israel. You see that Saudi clearly want to pursue the same path. Is that not ultimately the way it has to go?
How will that help resolve the Palestinian issue?
The question then is who will help rebuild and govern the people in Gaza after this? And that is...
No, I think the question George Galloway asked is the correct question. Like, how does that resolve the Palestinian conflict? It doesn't. All you're doing is just normalizing it with all of the countries around.
The question which is open for a lot of debate. I mean, there's no easy answer, clearly, what do you think?
You call it normalization, but there's nothing normal about these regimes that concluded under Trump's browbeating and bribery and the judicious deployment of his son-in-law. There's nothing normal about these countries. Their populations, 99.99% of them, are with the Palestinians and they're against this normalization. This is a Potemkin village. And even Trump, I think, will not seek to resurrect the Abraham Accords. The Oslo Accords are dead. The Abraham Accords never got off the ground because none of them have solved the fundamental problem of Palestinian statehood, of the return of the Palestinian refugees to their own land, their own homes, for which they have the title deeds written in English and countersigned and sealed with a stamp by British judicial authorities. You, I say it again, you nor I would ever accept anyone stealing our house. And no matter how long they live there, it will never be theirs. It will always be mine.